Good afternoon. My name is Kevin O'Connor. Welcome to all of you. Thank you very much for coming out this afternoon and for being here. I'll tell you a little bit about what's going to happen, and then we will get right to it. Some of our elected representatives are going to be joining us, and when they do, I will probably stop, make some introductions so that they can speak. But until that happens, we want to get to this panel right here. We have about a half hour, 35 minutes or so. And we want to talk about the skills gap. And we're hoping to get 4 things out of this discussion from our panelists. First, we want to better understand the scope of the problem, how this is affecting and what we are hearing from the folks who are on the front lines. We want to talk about the real-world effects that they're having on productivity and the companies. We want to talk about the benefits of apprenticeships from people who have done them, from people who have run them, and then we want to finish up with what it is that we need to do, particularly on the federal level. In the interest of time, I'm going to ask each one of these good folks to introduce themselves so that you know who you are listening to, and at the end, who you'll be speaking to, because there'll be an opportunity for all of you to ask questions of all of these folks. So starting from my far right, if you would please begin, and then we'll get to the questions.
Yes, my name is Todd Stafford, with the Electrical Training Alliance, Executive Director.
Nice and loud into your microphones too, folks. Oh, there's a button, I believe. Push to talk, if you would do that again, Todd. How about that?
Okay, Todd Stafford. I'm Executive Director of the Electrical Training Alliance.
I'm Bob Arnold. I'm the National Apprenticeship Director for the International Union of Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers.
I'm Brent Parton. I'm the Deputy Director on the Center on Education and Skills at New America.
I'm Dondi Kazukevich. I'm the Senior Manager of Brand Communications at Marvin Windows and Doors.
I'm Angie Hicks, co-founder of Angie's List.
I'm Don Norcross. I'm the electrician on the job for Kevin. And happen to be the first district representative from New Jersey, proud electrician, proud member of Congress.
Richard Trethewey, plumbing heating expert on this house and asked this house.
Norm Abram, master carpenter of this old house.
Nathan Gilbert, this old house, Generation Next apprentice.
All right, so in terms of the scope of the problem, Angie, I'd like to start with you. You have a unique position where you have access, direct access to thousands of professional contractors, and we are fortunate that you've spent a lot of time talking to them. How bad is this problem?
Yeah, the challenge of not getting enough skilled laborers is a challenge for the vast majority of companies we talk to. We talk to hundreds of thousands of companies across the country, and this is the challenge they have in growing their business. They're having to turn down work because they can't get enough people going into the trades. And the interesting thing is, the average age of a tradesperson these days is, it's in their 40s. Only 4% of tradespeople are in the 18 to 24 years of age range. There's really an issue with getting people to think about this as a career path. I think in so many ways we've made such great progress in getting more and more people to go to college that in some ways we've kind of left behind the trades that can be a great entrepreneurial experience and a great paying job. If you end up going into heating and cooling and you end up running a heating and cooling company someday, not only are you employing many people in your community most likely, but you're also making a great wage for your family. So I think there's really missed opportunities because people don't understand the opportunity that's available to them.
As promised, I'm going to interrupt, make some introductions, and then we'll get back to it. But first, I'd just like to call up Senator Coons. He and I just worked together, and he's officially called One Take Coons, just in case you didn't know that. That wasn't in the official bio, but what is that Senator Coons was elected to the U.S. Senate in 2010, following terms as the Newcastle County City Council President and Newcastle County Executive. Senator Coons had made supporting U.S. economic competitiveness a top legislative priority in the Senate through a variety of initiatives, including co-founding the bipartisan Senate Competitiveness Caucus. To take O'Connor. And before entering government, Senator Coons spent 8 years working for the advanced materials manufacturer in Delaware. Senator.
Well, thank you for working together earlier today, for giving me the hope that I might have some chance at a career outside the Senate, and for the opportunity to join with a number of my colleagues in thanking all of you and this incredibly talented panel for your comments today. I believe at some point we'll hear from Senators Moran and Brown and Young as well, who've been great partners in the work that we're doing together. And I'm thrilled that Congressman Donald Norcross is not just joining us, but is on the panel. I think both Congressman Norcross and David McKinley, folks who have real experience as an electrician and a carpenter and the co-chairs of the House Building Trades Caucus, have a lot to bring to all of us who are members who don't have the relevant deep experience that he brings to this conversation. And to the folks from this old house, both on the panel and our host today, thank you for sharing your insights into the importance of the career paths that are possible for young Americans through apprenticeships. You understand better than anyone the passion, the challenge, the opportunity that lies in front of young people if they choose a career that leads through apprenticeships into the skilled trades. So thank you for lending your powerful national voices to this conversation today. And as a Delawarean, forgive me, but I got to do shout-outs for my own. I'm thrilled that we've got some folks here to help draw attention to the great groundwork that's been laid. In Delaware, we've got Jeremy McIntyre and Trudy Petchin from Polytech Adult Education. We've got Lynn Danner from Sussex Tech and the folks at M. Davis & Sons, who I can see right there, who are joining us here today in the audience. And I'm grateful that you've joined us and that you've given me a lot of input on this issue. Senator Moran and I started the Competitiveness Caucus a number of years ago because we know senators on both sides of our aisle are frustrated with how little progress we're making on the issues that really matter to Americans. Improving infrastructure, improving advanced manufacturing, investing more in R&D, and most important for today, developing the next generation of skilled workers essentially through apprenticeships. So, you know, on Capitol Hill, we spent a lot of time talking about K-12 education, about higher education, but just not enough. Those are important, those are critical, but we don't spend enough time on the pathways that young people can take to build a successful career. Apprenticeships, as I've said before and others say, is sort of the other four-year degree. We're trying to get teachers and parents and young people to recognize that there is a paved pathway to a well-paying job with a lifetime skill that you can use with little to no debt and with high pay and high security, and that this is something that many more Americans should know about. The National Skills Coalition says there's 5.9 million job openings today. And there's 6.6 million unemployed Americans. Seems to me a match made in heaven. But unfortunately, there is a skills gap between those who want to work and are not employed and those who have jobs that they are having trouble filling. And filling that should be relatively easy because American workers are smart, they're willing to work hard. We just need to connect the skills, the workers, and the opportunities better. The data on apprenticeship programs is even better. It speaks for itself. 90% of those who complete apprenticeships land jobs with a starting wage that exceeds $60,000. That's above the national average salary. And in most places, that's enough to raise a family, that's enough to get going, and to do that without the anchor of $20,000 or $30,000 or $40,000 in college debt. I just wish more young people knew about this. Last week, I did something that I thought was a lot of fun with the Newcastle County Votech schools. A young man who grew up next door to me, I still call him Little Boy, but now he's a house. He's 6'7", 305 pounds. He signed with the Minnesota Vikings as an offensive tackle. So we had a big party, right? NFL signing day. His parents were very proud, and so were all of his friends and neighbors. We decided to take that same excitement and energy and put it to work, giving some visibility to the young people who are doing something really important for their lives and their careers. And so we celebrated 13 high school seniors who've been offered full-time jobs by local employers in Delaware because of the high-quality, high-skill instruction they'd received in high school career and technical education programs. It was a great event, not just because it recognized that these students have accomplished a great deal by succeeding in their classes and their work-study experience, but because they've got a bright career future ahead of them. Two of the recent graduates from Del Castle Technical High School are here with us today, Jared Stowe and Josh Unger-Buehler, along with the president of M. Davis. Could I ask all of you to stand up, please, just for a moment so we can give you a round of applause. Jared and Josh finished their co-op experience with M. Davis & Sons, a fifth-generation woman-owned industrial construction company, while they were in high school and are currently enrolled in the apprenticeship program to become welders. They work full-time in the modular fabrication shop at M. Davis and attend the apprenticeship program 2 nights a week. And I think this is just a remarkable start to a great life. So as you can tell, we have a robust apprenticeship program in Delaware, but I want to close by talking about one other thing we've done as a policy matter that I think broadens its reach. In 2014, our former governor, Jack Markell, launched a statewide initiative called Delaware Pathways to Prosperity, a program designed to connect our young people with the registered apprenticeship model to address gaps in the Delaware workforce. Delaware Pathways helps to expand post-secondary options for young men and women by going into schools, talking to them, giving them clear ways to choose a different path than going to a four-year college or university, and allows them to participate in pre-apprenticeship programs while they're still in school, and then helps them transition to apprenticeship training after graduation if that's the path that they choose. And I think that's the kind of program that we should be choosing to support here in Congress. Delaware Pathways, yes, supported the traditional skill building trades, but also helped create apprenticeship programs in other areas like home health care aides where there wasn't an existing apprenticeship model. And I think apprenticeships is the sort of thing that deserves more support. So let me close with good news. We, on a bipartisan basis in the last appropriations bill, appropriated $145 million to the U.S. Department of Labor to support the expansion of apprenticeship programs across our country. And that's $50 million over last year's level. That's something that was done by Republicans and Democrats in the House and the Senate. It doesn't get enough attention, but I frankly think it was a really good investment for our future. I've got a bipartisan bill. You're going to hear from one of the other co-sponsors, I hope, in a few minutes. We're going to introduce the Apprenticeship Hubs Across America Act of 2018, which is based on this Delaware Pathways model. It's a way that we can get something more done. But frankly, folks, there aren't enough Americans who know about the strength and power of apprenticeships. That's where this panel comes in. You're going to hear from a remarkably skilled and capable group of folks from a wide range of backgrounds who have worked in this field, and that's where you come in as well in terms of being able to help us spread this message. If you're a member of Congress, if someone who you have a relationship with in your state government or in your local education community doesn't recognize the value of apprenticeships, doesn't give it equal billing with going to college, please, let's pitch in and work on this together because we need to rebuild the skilled trades of this country, and in that way we can rebuild the wealth, the prosperity, the security, and the abundance of this country. Thanks for a chance to be with you. Thanks for a chance to steal the mic for a few minutes. And thank you so much to a great panel.
Thank you, Senator. Jumping right back into it. I just want to follow up with you, Angie, brief conversation that we had on the way over here. How you came to start thinking about this problem, the things that you were hearing that you said, wait a second, maybe that's not completely correct.
Yeah, I was having conversations probably 4 or 5 years ago. Kind of, you'd hear the conversations with the contractors saying they weren't able to find enough talent. And then I was talking to a lot of charitable organizations that focused on children in the Indianapolis area, whether it was United Way or the Boys and Girls Club. And they were saying, hey, the solution for all kids is they need to go to college. And it was just like this profound, like, that will solve all the world's problems, which I think college is a great path. I love college. But that wasn't the case. Right behind our campus in Indianapolis is the poorest elementary school in the city of Indianapolis. And when you ask those children what they want to be when they grow up, they say they want to be a teacher, a doctor, or a police officer, because those are the types of professions that they see in their day-to-day life. You know, their families are not remodeling a kitchen. You know, so they're not even being exposed to these opportunities, and it just seemed to me like such a big disconnect in what could happen. And, you know, how do we start tackling that? And, you know, we started small, and we're doing little career fairs with 5th and 6th graders at this school, introducing them the trades, bringing pros in, teaching them how to hammer, and talking about the difference between working there or going to a fast food restaurant. And, you know, the key thing for them is like, we're willing to train on the job. You come with a good attitude, and you're dependable, and you're willing to work hard, and we'll train you on the rest of it. And, you know, and it was fun to watch these young kids. I was like, it's either going to go really well or really horribly with, you know, 11 and 12-year-olds. They'll either tune out or be excited. And they were taking notes, and they were excited about it because it was opening up ideas to them that seemed very tangible and achievable.
Before I move on, I'm going to do another introduction. Correct? All right. One more introduction. Senator Sherrod Brown. Prior to joining the U.S. Senate in 2007, Brown served as a U.S. representative for the 13th District of Ohio, Ohio's Secretary of State, a member of the Ohio General Assembly, and taught in Ohio's public schools. Senator Brown recently announced $7 million for sector-based workforce training in Ohio and helped pass the Sectors Act to support dislocated workers trained from high-demand jobs. He also announced nearly $3 million in funding for the Greater Ohio Penn Manufacturing Apprenticeship Network through the Department of Labor's American Apprenticeship Grant Program. Please say hello to Senator Brown.
Thank you, and thanks for having me be part of this. I heard Senator Coons today talk in the Democratic caucus about the signing day that he did in Delaware last weekend, I think, with a number of new apprentice jobs and what that means. I appreciate seeing Congressman Norcross here. He and I are on a special select 16-person committee on pensions where there are in my state alone, 60,000 workers, mostly Teamsters. It's a bit far afield from what you're doing, but how important it is to make sure as you work with young workers that they know that if they end up in a program with a pension, that we will make good on that promise. So thank you for that. I one real quick story, and I know you've heard a lot of success stories on what apprentice programs can do. I do a podcast about once a month, a little more often than that, that's all about workers and people that union and non-union alike in my state. And it's a program, I ran into a program in Canton, Ohio, city just south of Akron, called Get Connected. And it's a local program that connects young, typically 18, 20, 25-year-olds with jobs and with apprentice programs. And you could just see, listening to sort of the before and after from these young workers, what this meant to their standard of living, what it meant to their outlook, what it for the future, what it meant to their marriages, what it meant to their families, and what it meant to those that already had kids. And it's a big, big deal, and it's something we need to do a lot more of and to do a lot better at in our country. So I thank Senator Coons for inviting me to this. Senator Young, nice to see you. And I know Senator Moran's going to join you at some point too. And I appreciate the chance to say a few words. Thanks for the work you're doing.
Thank you, Senator. Please say hello to Senator Young, who served as a U.S. Representative for Indiana's 9th Congressional District from 2011 to 2017 until being elected to the U.S. Senate. He was honorably discharged from the military as a U.S. Marine captain in 2000. Senator Young recently launched his Fair Shot Agenda, which focuses on 4 key areas: opportunity, safety, health, and better government. Senator Young.
Well, thanks so much for having me here today. I have to say, I really showed up for one reason. I see my fellow Hoosier, Angie Hicks, on the panel, and she's an iconic entrepreneur in our state who has put together such an incredible brand. And before I get out of here, we're getting a picture together. Is that a deal? Okay, all right. Well, I'll continue with my remarks. Thank you. So many of you, entrepreneurs out there, business leaders, other stakeholders, understand that we have a major skills gap in this country. I know my colleagues do, Senator Coons and Moran, who I've been fortunate enough to work with in conjunction with the Senate Competitiveness Caucus. Senator Brown, also, you just heard from him. He's been a leader in this area. And my House colleagues, I think some of them are present as well, Congressman Norcross and McKinley from the Building Trades Caucus. Really, this is not a partisan issue during a time when we're looking to cooperate in areas that sometimes that can be difficult, especially as we head into election years. But it's broadly recognized across the state of Indiana, I know, that we have a skills gap. Sometimes that's on account of people not having the sorts of education or training they require to fill existing positions. Other times, it's sort of a geographic or mobility issue where there are folks out there who have jobs, they just either can't get to the positions or they have the skills required to fill the positions, but they can't get to them, or they're not self-identifying as available for those jobs. The construction industry is one, as I've gone around the state of Indiana, where I've seen a particular need, especially as the housing market and building market has picked up. There are more than 5.7 million workers that will be needed through 2020 in non-residential construction, but the expected available workforce during this period will only be $4.7 million. So we have to begin addressing this gap now, and that's why it's so encouraging to see so many folks here. One opportunity to address this skills gap is through continued focus on career and technical education, or CTE. CTE programs should, of course, be aligned with the needs of the local and regional workforce and should help students receive real-world skills. Everywhere I go, there's a great emphasis these days on, of course, we want to focus on the classics. We want to have a better understanding of what makes human beings tick and so forth. But we need to make sure that if we're investing in education, it's going to be applicable and relevant to current workforce needs. As a member of the Senate CTE caucus, I've witnessed how apprenticeships and other partnerships with businesses, industries, and other stakeholders are vital to address our workforce needs. I did launch the Fair Shot Agenda per my introduction. A key component of that is to ensure that every Hoosier and every American has access to a quality education. And to do this, we're going to have to explore and promote the unique ways apprenticeship programs and CTE can provide opportunities for students. And by students, I don't mean people who happen to have graduated from a K through 12 program. We're really having to rethink what it means to be a student. We're all students, and we'll continue to be students throughout our working lives these days. I'm working on some legislative proposals. I'd like to quickly rattle some off. Perhaps some of these will be of interest to you. One is to address occupational licensing issues. This is mostly a state-level issue, but there's some things we can do at the federal level, for example, with respect to military spouses, to making sure that they're not experiencing occupational licensing barriers into positions. Expanding innovative higher ed financing opportunities. There's an instrument out there called income share agreements that allow people to have their education financed through sort of an equity investment. This would be on top of the existing grant and loan programs. And we are looking to reform the underutilized and frankly pretty inefficient but long-standing experimental sites initiative at institutions of higher ed. This was supposed to give schools flexibility to experiment, but it's never really been utilized robustly. There's never been rigorous evaluation, so we want to revamp the program so it can actually work. And then lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't tout Senator Coons' legislation, which you are likely excited about if you've heard about it, the Apprenticeship Hubs Across America Act. This is going to help expand highly successful apprenticeship programs around the country. It will provide a funding opportunity to workforce intermediaries that assess and coordinate job placement needs in communities. Most apprenticeship programs, as I close here, I would note have completion rates at 80% or better, leading individuals to high-demand, high-wage pathways to employment. And I'm confident that the legislation Senator Coons led on, and I'm supporting him in, will help strengthen apprenticeship programs across the country and help ensure everyone has a fair shot to succeed. With that, I will conclude, and I thank you so much for this opportunity and all of you for your leadership and your work. God bless.
Thank you, Senator. I think I am introducing Senator Moran. Co-chair of the Senate Competitive Caucus, Senator Jerry Moran has been serving in the U.S. since 2010. Since joining the U.S. Senate, Senator Moran has been a leading advocate for issues related to entrepreneurship, job creation, and innovation, and serves as co-founder of the Senate Competitive Caucus. Senator Moran.
You did that very well. Thank you. I just came here to tell you, thank you very much. I just came here to tell you that I'm smarter than all of you, only because you had to listen to everybody who preceded me. I arrived only in time to hear me talk. I'm sorry for you. Delighted to be here, delighted to join with Senator Coons as we've tried to find a bipartisan path to opportunities to enhance the chance that Americans can compete in a global economy, and what that means is more jobs, better jobs, higher paying jobs, a better standard of living. The American dream is alive and well, and every citizen of this country, me as a member of the United States Senate, all of us together ought to be looking for ways in which the American dream is something that is achievable. And what I have discovered is in every conversation that I've had with a business owner, with a business manager, is we have jobs, but we don't have a trained workforce to fill those jobs. It is what is holding back Kansas and other states. But I see it, I mean, in a rural place like Kansas, it is a significant issue. An apprenticeship is something that we ought to pursue with full relish, with all guns blazing. It's important for us to find ways to put people into the workforce so that they too can pursue the American dream. Wichita, Kansas, air capital of the world, general aviation manufacturing, Spirit Aerosystems is looking for 1,000 employees as they expand their business. And we're working with our community colleges, technical colleges to fill those positions. What a good path it would be is if we had apprenticeships in place in which those people are therefore trained, to have experience, and come immediately to work. We desperately want to make certain that there's a future for our state and its people. The sad thing is the future is there if we only had the people who had the skill set, the motivation, and the desire to work. The place in which Chris and I are both appropriators, the place in which we're working to make a difference in this regard is the appropriations process on USA Apprenticeship, and we're increasing the funding to see that that program is supported by the taxpayers of the United States. I, again, would just thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to my colleagues. Thank you for listening to me. But I appreciate the panel that is going to highlight the opportunities for us to make a difference. The American dream is alive and well. And thank you all for being here. And if we could demonstrate to the American people that we can solve problems, this would be a great opportunity for us to do that. And there's no reason for this to be anything that is Republican versus Democrat or vice versa. This is something that we all ought to embrace together and have a success. I thank my House members for coming over this afternoon, and I'm honored to be with you and encourage you to pursue this with all seriousness. The country depends upon decisions that we make in regard to workforce training and particularly apprenticeships. Thank you very much.
All right, let's get back to it. Congressman Norcross had to excuse himself because he had to go vote. Apparently electricians vote, but plumbers do not. So we're going to move to you, Richard. Fourth generation plumber,
I'll
been
go
at
vote
it
on
for
something.
40 years. Your perspective is unique in the sense that you have not only had to run this business, but you've taken a sort of macro view with us. How acute is this problem?
Well, I think the question is perspective, perception, I'm sorry. Perception. When I got into this industry, I was a fourth generation, but the perception of that the plumber was just, third-class citizen. The whole push was to move everybody, and the perception was that you could go. It happened in 1968. I want to know who we can blame for it, but the only career path back then, it seemed, was a liberal arts degree, so you could come out, get a cubicle at Ma Bell. You can't get a cubicle anymore. You can't. There's no more Ma Bell. But the perception has always been to just get people into a college program. The reality is, for the last 60 years, 50, 60 years, as the American home has gotten older, there's been nobody to fill the gap, and there's a lost generation. The VOTEC schools became a dumping ground, and now, for us, we feel so empowered to sort of try and tell this story, because if we can get to the kid that's 13, 14 years old, that's not sure where he wants to, he's always been good with his hand, or he or she, just with their hands, and could sell them on a different path, a path that's different than the guidance counselor is selling them on. Guidance counselors are our biggest enemy on this because they're rewarded on their college placement percentage, and so how many people you can hook on that crack. And so that's a little strong, sorry. But that's how they're rewarded. The realtor also celebrates the town's value by the school college placement percentage. And so those two things will work against us no matter what we do. So the perception is that the only path is there. The reality is, after we showed Generation Next, I was amazed at what we heard back from parents. And we get it, you get it in real life terms now. Social media tells you right away, oh my goodness, I was, I didn't want to feel like I didn't love my kid and I want to give them something. And so the last piece of this perception thing is, the reality is, if you give somebody a skill that they can never get taken away, they will be empowered forever. And if we can make a difference, I don't know what 50 extra million means. I don't know what, how we make this thing turn the corner. But we got to just keep at it. We've lost one generation. We can get the next one back. It'll take another 20 years to get it primed again. But there's something to be done here. So,
Dondi, I'd like to move to you. Marvin Windows, we on this old house are familiar with the craftsmanship that goes into the product. Several of us are now intimately familiar with the size of the operation, the thousands of people, the factory, and such. What are the problems that you see? How difficult is it for you to keep that workforce there? And what are the things that you are doing to address this problem from your company's perspective?
So a couple things. So Marvin Windows, what Kevin's referring to, Marvin Windows and Doors is a fourth-generation company in northern Minnesota. The town where our headquarters is located is Warroad, Minnesota. Our population is smaller than the number of people who work at our plant. We are definitely an employer who believes in supporting our communities and our employees, but recruiting and keeping a workforce in a small rural town can be difficult. And recruiting to manufacturing can be difficult. So we as a manufacturer definitely feel the effects of the skills gap. But on the other side of the issue, as we see it for our customers. So we win when our customers win. And we hear from builders every time we talk to them that the thing they're struggling with the most is what Richard talked about, is finding a skilled workforce. They can find people to install our windows, but they can't necessarily find people who can do a quality job. Tom and I talked about this a few months ago, and it's like there's training, and then there's training to do it the right way. And that's something that Marvin and this old house have in common. We believe that apprenticeship is training someone to do the job right the first time and to focus on quality. And to not just build our workforce and fill a job, but fill it with really skilled and talented people, so that we're building quality homes for Americans. If the skilled workforce is less focused on quality and knowing how to do their job, they're building less quality homes.
We have heard from companies that have told us that they would sell more of what they make if they could find more people to install what they make.
We have definitely heard that from our customers. Especially in the last couple of years, we anecdotally hear every time we meet with our builder customers that they could build more houses if they had better crews, if they had more crews. That they're turning jobs away because they don't have the crews to keep up with the work.
Turning to you, Norm, I want to talk about apprenticeships and the specifics of sort of what can be done, our experience with doing it, to share with the audience some of the things that are happening out there now.
Well, first of all, over the years, I know Tom Silver and myself have gone to International Builders Show, and we see all these shows. We run into a lot of contractors, and many of them say they were inspired to become contractors because of this old house. And that's nice to hear, but as you've all heard, with the situation we have now, we have to do even more. So, we established Generation Next, and there's a couple things that we did that for. One, we want to provide scholarships for technical education. So what we did is our staff, our connections, have connected with manufacturers and all kinds of organizations and tried to raise money for scholarships. And we're starting a new scholarship program. We're going to introduce an app where you can donate to help fund these scholarship programs to do technical education. But the one thing that I think Generation Next has done that no one else has done is that we talk about people not experiencing, like in the grammar school, playing with wood and being in the workshop. That all went away. And my pitch on this is that we have to let young people experience working with their hands and their minds, not hoping that they're going to want to become carpenters or plumbers or electricians, but more to understand the process. They're like life lessons. My father was a carpenter, and when you grow up in that environment, our fathers were teaching us how to take care of our homes and so forth. So, we don't have so much of that. But with Generation Next, we brought apprentices into our project, and we required subcontractors to have apprentices. And if you watch the show, you've all seen a lot of them express their feelings about the whole process. But the magic here is that I think you can influence someone who's young, who might have an interest in building, to make the next step when you see things on our show where Tommy's working with a carpenter, the mason is working with an apprentice, the plumber is working with an apprentice, the electrician is working with an apprentice. And they get a glimpse that you don't see when you're just thinking about getting into the trades. They get a glimpse of the process, and that it's a long, lifelong process, step by step. You don't, even if you go to technical school, when you walk out of the door, and I've seen this happen when I was working with my father as a kid, the tech school kid would come to the job site, and he thought he knew everything. It's not the case. I learn new things every day that I work around at home. Richard learns new things about his technology, and everybody's in the same place. But I was impressed by our apprentices because they showed patience. They were willing to listen to what we had to say. They admitted that they learned and that it was a process and it was going to take time. And that's what we need more of. You know, it's sort of like the parent who can tell your child to do something and they'll fight you hand and fist. But if a contemporary of them told them the same thing, they would do exactly what you were asking them to do. So I think the Generation Next on this old house, by featuring apprentices, learning the trades, and telling why they love what they do, can help a lot in this. So that's why we also appreciate all the companies that are partnering with us to help fund scholarship opportunities. And they're our partners through this. And I have one of our apprentices right here, so I'll let it go at that.
Nathan, that's your cue, and you may not think of yourself as an apprentice after being a second-generation carpenter, 5 years as a Navy Seabee. You came to us with a lot of experience, but you did play that apprenticeship role. You played it well, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tell us about that and what you've taken away from that experience.
So I feel that this old house really helped me fine-tune, my craft, my skills. I knew a little bit coming into it, being a builder in the CBs. I had a lot of background with the building and the framing, but working hand in hand with these guys and them taking the time to teach me what they thought I needed to know to be successful was huge to me, Austin, and Bailey. Growing up, my father was a carpenter, and my grandfather was a CB builder. My father was a CB builder. So it's kind of, for me, I almost grew up in an apprenticeship kind of stage, roofing on the weekends and doing, dirty work. But, gives you some skill.
In terms of your outlook for this career,
Yes.
You've chosen this as a career. You've started your own company. You now work with your father.
Yep.
You've made a bet that this is a good job and this is a good career. Is that going to pan out?
I'm definitely invested in it. I grew up enjoying doing it every day. I love going to different job sites. I see that I can have, a nice truck, a nice home. I can have everything I want with this job. The harder I work, the more money I make, and the more successful I can be. And I think there's nothing more rewarding than that.
And you have peers out there that have chosen different paths. Do they look at you now that you are established and doing this differently? Do you have conversations with them about these things?
As I grow older, I have more friends asking me, how do you do this? How do you do that? And I reference them back to a lot of the YouTube videos this old house has put out, and they're like, oh, that's how you do that.
I just call Tommy, but we'll give you his number out later.
Can you say that one more time?
Well, I'm just curious, are they looking at you differently? Are they asking you different questions? Because they went down one path, you went down another, and here you are talking about gainful employment, the truck you want, the house you want. What's that conversation going on between you and your peers who took a different route?
I do have some friends that are making the full circle right now. They went to school for 4 years. They tried to get the job, but the job wasn't there for them. So now they're going out and getting jobs as plumbers or electricians, but unfortunately, a lot of them have debt, and they're 4 or 5 years behind the ball now.
Mm-hmm.
So it is nice to see some guys my age coming into it, though, even though they are a little older. But working with Austin and Bailey, that gave me kind of a breath of fresh air to see some young, motivated kids and know that there are people who are going to fill those spots. We just got to give them the opportunity.
I'm going to keep it moving to what is working right now. As I said, time is tight. I had 3 agendas, 3 senators spoke, so they're all gone. They took them. Sticky fingers, these guys. But that's all right. We know where we're going.
Paper.
Todd, I want to start with you on the sort of what is working, what is out there, what have you learned? Tell us the programs that you are involved with and what your experience has been in terms of what you've learned from the programs that you put in place.
Oh, it's multifaceted. We have our electrical apprenticeship program, which is about 40,000 participants annually. 4 different programs in which you can become an inside wireman, residential, telecommunications, or an outside lineman program. But it benefits us to also have pre-apprenticeship as well as what we refer to as interim credential, working within the high schools to teach our curriculum in the first year of our apprenticeship program at a high school level. So it helps find a way to educate more than anything else the apprentices on what skill sets we ask them to bring to the table to become an apprentice, and they find out it's 0. All we want to have is somebody willing to learn, is going to show up and have the right attitude. We'll teach them everything they need. But at the same time, it was driven by the need because of a gap in applications for apprenticeship. Traditionally, we used to approximate 85, 90,000 applications for apprenticeship annually in our program. The numbers dropped significantly to about half, 42, 43,000.
Why is that? Why do you think that happened?
It's overall, I think it's acceptance of culture of apprenticeship. The culture doesn't realize it's a viable pathway for a meaningful career. Personally, working through the apprenticeship program myself, as Norm was speaking earlier, I can't agree with that more about teaching you as an apprentice: patience, dedication, commitment, perseverance, understanding how to commitment to finish the job. I know that's what it taught me, so I was able to go back to school, get an electrical engineering degree. There was no way that I could have done that first out of high school. I wasn't mature enough. Yet apprenticeship teaches you so much more than just learning how to install a component or build a new widget that's out, but it teaches you more about the model of what it takes to succeed in life. And the best thing about it is you have that individual that's working side by side with you, your master, your technician, your journeyman working with you, showing you how to progress, and also giving you life skill advice along the way.
And what is the path for those 40,000+ apprentices? What is their future when they're finished with you?
Well, our annual starting salary is about $75,000 a year plus benefits. No debt. It's a private training model. We'll spend $330 million, private dollars this year on apprenticeship. We have 285 centers around the country, which we donate. We contribute finance within our organization to train new participants.
What is your success rate in terms of attrition, graduation, moving forward?
Well, if we look at today's number, we're 80 plus, about 84, 85% succeeding. And we find somewhere life gets in the way. Things happen to where they don't succeed, but majority of those will reapply after a year or two and come back in the program and finish it the second time.
And if you had those 90,000 applicants that you used to have, would there be a good job for each one of those additional apprentices on the far side?
In today's market, looking forward, yes. We just can't have enough to get in our program today. And I heard from a small-scale individual contractor how the turning worked down because of it. I think large scale is no different. Large scale, I've heard it said we had 20,000, we put them more work tomorrow. We had them.
Bob, I put the same question to you, and I'm curious if you could just describe for the audience the programs that you have in place and in your experience with those.
Well, just to start at the beginning, what a registered apprenticeship program is most of the building trades programs are between 2 and 5 years. They have on-the-job training hours that they have to complete, and then they have related training where they come back to school. So we're bringing students in constantly for training in school, then they learn on the job. The foreman keeps track of what they can do, what they can't do, grades them.
And what trades are we talking about?
We're talking, our trades are brick, tile, stone, cement, plaster, I'm sure I forget a couple, terrazzo. But like everybody's been saying, you earn while you learn. You're earning money, you're learning, you don't have $80,000 in debt. And somebody mentioned before, we have a lot of people that come and apply, they have 4-year degrees. They got out of college and said, hey, I'm making $25,000 a year or $30,000 a year. I can start at $30,000 a year and go up to 60, 70, 80, 90. You know, we got people making triple-digit salaries every year. So it's a great process. You bringing apprentices in, teaching them what you know, and the instructor. We have a couple hundred instructors around the country, and they really take pride in what they do, and it's a great program.
Serving how many apprentices?
We have about 12,000, I think.
And what are you hearing from the companies where these apprentices are ending up? What are they telling you in terms of what they need?
Well, we have, like Todd said, we have contractors that aren't bidding jobs because they don't have enough people. They're saying, I can't bid, I bid jobs, I got enough work for the next 2 years, and I'm not bidding anything for the next 2 years. So that's telling us that we need thousands of people.
You have an interesting perspective on this. When you make the pitch to a young person and they turn you down and they say, nope, this is not for me, what are they telling you? What are they saying that they'd rather do, or why are they saying that they don't want to be part of something the way you just described to me, which sounds terrific?
Yeah, it's hard work. You know, that's probably the biggest thing. In our trade, a lot of times we work outside, and Minnesota in January, you're not working outside. I'd bring Minnesota up. Chicago, I'm from Chicago, so Chicago in January, you're not working outside.
And their phones freeze up.
Probably the biggest, yeah. But in masonry, you know, if you're outside, really cold, some people, when I was an apprentice, when I was younger, I kind of looked forward to that, you know, maybe a few weeks off, but some people, they get their first paycheck, and they go buy a new truck, and they do this and they do that, and they think they need this check's going to come every week the same. Well, all of a sudden, it slows down a little bit, or it gets cold, and I got to go get a job because I got a little kid, I got a brand new truck, I got a house payment. So that's, and we tell them when we go through the pre-apprenticeship, don't go buy a new truck. It's the first thing don't go buy it. They still do, but it's a really fulfilling career, it really is.
So Brent, you have the last chapter, which is basically, what do we do? What can we do about this problem, and in particular, what should we be thinking about on the national level?
That's it, huh?
Just wrap it up and take it home, would you please?
Sure. So I'll start off with the good news. In recent years, we've seen a lot of important action at the federal level. There's a lot of interest, bipartisan basis, in apprenticeship for good reason. You hear the consequences that the lack of a skilled workforce has for employers. And we hear a lot, even on this panel, about the consequences it's having for students, particularly ones that are, when we look at who's going to higher education today, and about half of them will finish in about 6 years, and most of them will have about $30,000 in debt. So there's consequences on both ends. There's a lot of interest in doing something about it. The good news is the federal government historically has played a fairly limited role in apprenticeship, but that has changed in the past couple of years. There are opportunities for the federal government to be more active in promoting the expansion of apprenticeship, and I'll just give you two right here to think about. The first one is the federal government can send a very powerful message that reverses the over several decades long undervaluing of apprenticeship in our education systems. Today in the U.S., the average age of an apprentice is 30. You go to a place like Germany and Switzerland, where over half of their high school graduates become apprentices. The average age is 16 or 17. So we have historically undervalued apprenticeship as a way of learning in this country. We've undervalued the career pathways that it can lead to. When we do legislation on any workforce education issue, we should be thinking about how do we incorporate apprenticeship into that. Schools at the local, state, and every level around it do what gets measured. And if there's no clear way to measure apprenticeship, incent apprenticeship within all of the things that we're holding schools accountable for today, which tend to be much more focused on college going, we're not going to see the action on the ground. So the federal government can play a big role in sending clear messages in every piece of legislation that it puts together on education and workforce. The second thing is the harsh reality around apprenticeship, which is you don't want the federal government to get in the way of what makes it so powerful, which is an apprenticeship is an investment by an employer in a young person to develop their skills. That's not saying, though, that there aren't investments that the federal government can't make and is making today and should do more of. And that's this question that Senator Coons brought up around intermediaries. You can't get a job done without someone to do it. Not a lot of American employers are familiar with apprenticeship today. So how do we get them the help they need to make it easier to start programs? That's really what this really complicated term intermediary means. It's people at a community college, it's labor unions, it's community-based organizations, it's employer associations, chambers of commerce. All of these types of organizations today have played these roles as intermediaries, helping work with a lot of employers to set up programs and helping recruit high-quality candidates into those programs and making them work. The federal government invested $145 million last year, and that was huge. That was the historic investment. Follows up on a $90 million investment in these intermediaries from the year before. But that is nowhere near enough when you look at the amount of money we spend in other places around education and workforce development. So we should double down on those investments. We should continue to invest in states, which is what the Department of Labor grants have done to help build their capacity to support these intermediaries. And we should look at pieces of legislation, like Senator Coons has mentioned, around sort of how we can put direct resources on the ground to give employers the help they need to set up these programs and do them differently. And if there's more of these programs out there for students to take advantage of, it's not a hard sell once we can say what it is, as we've talked about on this panel today. So those are two things that I think we should really kind of be thinking about. There's some momentum out there, but it's going to take pushing and pressure on all of our friends here on the Hill to do more. So those are pieces that we can start on today.
When you say that we invested $145 million followed by 90, what did we invest it in?
Correct. So $145 million as well as the 90 before it. It's called the Apprenticeship USA Grant Fund. That is the first of its kind, I should mention, congressional investment in expanding apprenticeship. And what it basically says is two things. It creates grants for states to really do two important things. One, help market apprenticeship and invest in intermediaries within the states and develop a strategy to get it done. These investments have been very important, from having governors in every state, having education leaders in every state saying, well, hey, if the federal government's willing to invest in apprenticeship, we should come up with a strategy to expand it and hold it up on high. So these grants have helped build capacity to support the formation of apprenticeship programs. Today, or historically in states, when you said, who's the person that's in charge of apprenticeship, people have said, well, it's that guy down the hall. That's not enough capacity to get it done, to get enough programs set up and running. How do we support employers on the ground to make it easier? And these grants have played a tremendous role in getting that started, but it's really just a limited amount of resources. We need to do more, and we need to make sure that money doesn't cut off.
Todd, you said you guys spend how much?
Over $300 million.
All right, Fred. So hang on a second. You guys are spending $300+ million.
Yes,
Private money.
private money.
What's going on? 145. Explain that. What is the holdup? What is the problem? I mean, if the numbers are so compelling, if the jobs exist, why is 145? I mean, that just pales in comparison, Brent. So I'm curious, as you sort of are dealing with this here in this organization, what message is not getting through?
I think that, again, historically, we haven't thought about the government can play an important role in this space. And when we think about, this is really the ideal, and there's a bipartisan interest in this, which is the government's not running the program. The government's brokering the program between the private sector and the people that want to take advantage of these opportunities. That's something we're not used to funding in Washington. We're very much more used to funding an education program that puts someone in something and they get something in the end. Apprenticeship is a public-private partnership. So how do we figure out how to kind of form those partnerships? And that's something I think that's new for the government. But in times like these, it's one of the most important roles that federal investment can play. I think that as that we see more results on the ground with these early investments, we should be thinking bigger. And we should be thinking bigger in light of all the other investments we make in programs across the board.
So I'd like it to open it to the entire panel, maybe a sticky issue, but let's get into it. College education, the push to send kids to college. We know what the message is from families, and we know what the message is in schools, but I would push back and say we also think we know what the message is from the federal government if we have trillions of dollars in subsidized student loans. Are we missing? Is there a big pendulum that needs to shift back so that we have an equal emphasis on what we all agree is a worthwhile cause? Anyone who wants to dive in.
I can say one thing. If you want to spend, we do spend a lot of money on education. Bring the shop classes back. You know, when I was in high school, we had metal shop and auto shop and welding, and we got our hands on it. We made a project, and I want to do this.
In the front row, Lewis right here from New Jersey, when we talked, one of the insiders, before he said, when they took shop away, it was like changing the whole ecological balance of the planet, because, you know, of the country, because what you talked about, Noam, they weren't touching anything tactile. They weren't learning to use their hands at all. You know, it's definitely that taking away shop was a big deal.
Is the scale tilted tremendously against these programs? I mean, we're in Massachusetts, we're fortunate, I guess. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but we have a waiting list for our vocational schools, and we're building new vocational schools. I guess the waiting list suggests we don't have enough, but it does suggest that the message is getting through. I'm curious as to the macro. Is the scale tilted too much in one direction and not enough in this one? I should say to the detriment of this one.
It has tilted dramatically in all of the incentives for secondary and post-secondary education are geared towards a college pathway. Whether you're talking 529 plans, Pell Grants, other cost substitution methods for students to go to school are on the college pathway. There's zero for apprenticeship. That's including starting at the shop class. They start learning it's not the way to go by doing away with shop. Then all the incentives models afterwards do not support apprenticeship. So it's kind of hard to tell an individual that's trying to get a pathway to the middle class that can't finance to go buy tools or boots or clothes to go to work, that I can go buy books for college. I can get a Pell Grant. Yeah. But I don't have the method to go to the apprenticeship program. So that incentive model there alone is a chief factor in why we don't get a lot in the apprenticeship model. Now I'll try to get to college first, get the debt, and figure out, wait a minute, I'll go further in debt to get an apprenticeship now just so I can.
I have like two perspectives on this. I mean, one, you know, when we surveyed pros recently, like literally I think it was 80 or 85% of them said, you know, bring shop class back to high school. Like, I mean, that was literally their number one. They're like, that's just a missed opportunity because that's just an introduction to it. But it's interesting because I'm also, you know, the mother of a soon-to-be freshman in high school and kind of going and listening to them kind of talk about all the programs available to them in their high school. You know, it was literally, she could, you know, take college-level classes in high school. She could learn to be a lawyer practically in high school. She could do, you know, learn to be a healthcare provider in high school. But there was no talk of doing vocational work in high school. This is, you know, it's a huge high school. It's a 4,000 student high school. You know, that just is an example of kind of that missed opportunity. We're spending all of our time thinking about how we kind of jump ahead into college, but we're leaving behind a whole group of people, and we're missing an opportunity to make it a priority. Because if we don't, they're not going to automatically think about it until they're, you know, 25 or 30 and are thinking, gosh, I need a better paying job. What's out there to me? We're not making it easy for them to think about those.
Donnie, can you paint a picture of what life is like for a Marvin employee in terms of their ability to live a middle-class lifestyle? They work there for a long time.
I was actually going to paint a picture of what it's like to be the mother of a high school senior.
You could do that too.
Jumping on Angie's comment, I mean, we just went through the whole college process. And so it was, and went through the whole high school process. And there were kids, and I'm sure you've all experienced this, who spent their senior year going to college, you know, through the programs where you're taking college credits in your senior year of high school. And I think there just isn't, I just agree with you, that there isn't an awareness of the options of trade. And the message isn't there that it's a rewarding and fulfilling and very purpose-driven career. I think that's where Marvin and the building industry probably overlap. So for our company, one of the unique things about Marvin is we are a very multi-generational company. There are lots of generations of families who continue to work in our company, and one generation teaching another. So we have almost a built-in apprenticeship as we pass on our skill and knowledge. But it's a rewarding career. It's and I think that there's there's a career path within our own company as well. So once you get started, there's a future within Marvin.
Does that career path always require a college education?
No. No.
Interesting. Go ahead, Brett.
I just spoke to a contractor group in South Carolina, and there was this guy that stood up in the back, and he said to all of his cohorts in the room, he said, you know how we could make a difference? You show up at a career night and tell them about your life. Tell them that you make six figures. You make more than you even tell your accountant. And, you know, and tell them, sorry, but tell them that you love what you do, not every day, but you love what you do, and look, and you can walk around your local town and say, yeah, I was part of that one, and that one, and that, and that, and that, and there's a feeling you're never going to get anywhere else. And so it was an interesting outlook to sell the idea to young people that you can make a living at. That's what it is, perception. So,
Brent, you had something?
I would just say that, and it's hard, but it's also an opportunity. Most people are going to college because they think that's the path to a career.
Yeah, that's right.
And we shouldn't lose sight of that, is that that's what's been printed in their mind to some extent. And if we don't show them that there's other opportunities for a career, it's okay, they're going to assume that. And so you look at all the money we're spending on higher education, there's people, a lot of it are trying to get jobs in this sector and that sector, but if employers can do a lot of what you were saying, show up, do internships, host pre-apprenticeships, do these things, get them exposed, get them the work-based learning experience, that's going to show them that there's other options and other paths to get there.
Nathan, there was a comment made earlier as to why maybe more kids don't say yes to the apprenticeship programs. And the answer was because it's hard work.
It's hard work. Yeah.
Is it hard work?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to glorify, hard, like you're getting dirty, you're not getting paid great when you get out of it, not as much as you'd be like to making it in 10 years. But it's kind of hard to say it's going to suck for a while before it gets better, but it does get better and it gets great, to be honest. To note on the schools targeting kids towards college, I can remember 10 years ago walking into my guidance counselor's office and every kid's name's on the board, and next to it is what college they're going to go to. And some of them filled, some of them weren't, but that's completely the wrong idea of what we should be doing with the kids.
There was no board for the kids who weren't going.
No, it was either you're going to this school or your spot was empty. So
We need a board. Go ahead, Norm. This is the first time Norm's ever asked me if he could speak. I'd love this.
I think sometimes you have to put a little of the burden of the problem on parents, dictating the path of their children. And I'm kind of an example of that to some respect. I mean, my father was a carpenter. I went to a school where there was no shop. It was a parochial school. We had nothing. But I was by my father's side all the time. And I learned how to build through him and to work hard. So there were days that were miserable. I mean, you get up on a roof in New England and you shovel the snow off in January so you can finish shingling it. It's not fun. But it's a lesson, it's you work hard. The problem is that parents, so what happened in my case is my father really wanted me to go to college. So I said, okay, I'll go to college. I was a good student. And so I went off to the University of Massachusetts in mechanical engineering. And I did 2 years of that. Loved being in the labs. Loved the labs. Working in the labs. Hated 600 kids in a thermodynamics class. And I just wasn't meant to be an engineer. So I wanted to be a contractor, but I was terrified to say to my father or my mother that I didn't want to be in college. My buddies in school convinced me to stay in, so I transferred over to the business school, which was a piece of cake. And I figured I'll learn something about running a business, and then because then I can also, do my skills. I eventually, I didn't get a degree, but I spent 5 years in college. I saw a thing on a bulletin board one day, and that started me on the path. The funny thing was, this was 1972. I left school, and all my buddies, this is 1972, could not find a job. I got hired by a company in Boston, a startup building company, and we were doing jobs in Vermont, and I hired my four best friends from college because they didn't have a job. But on my parents' side, I was surprised when I actually went to them and told them I got completely the opposite of what I expected, which was I thought my father would go ballistic. But my father was fine with it. My mother went ballistic. So I think if you're a parent, just think before you push your kids so far down the road, because you might be doing the wrong thing. You have to let them fluctuate a little bit. I ran into a woman one day in Boston, and she said, my son, he watched this old house since it was the beginning, and now he's a contractor. I said, I want to know his story. How did he do this? And he said, he wanted to try it, and he did it. And I said, good for you for allowing your child to take the path that they were most interested in. So I think we have to think about that too. We have to educate parents, not just contractors and manufacturers. We have to educate parents.
Welcome back, Congressman.
No, I was not on coffee break.
No, we know where you were. Richard's ready to step in for the next vote. He's got his card with him right there. Apprenticeships. We'd like to hear your experience. The only electrician in the U.S. Congress, and the only congressman to film with this old house. So you've got both of them. We were on the job site several weeks ago where he joined us on the newest project that will be airing for next season's premiere. He brought his tool belt, and he schooled some young people in what to do. So you have a unique perspective on this, and we are deep into the throes of the discussion on apprenticeships.
Well, Kevin, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to come work again, for a living and an honorable living. And certainly it's something that I take great pride in. As I was growing up, I used to tell my kids, I'm just an electrician with a tie, because that's what I do today. The pathway from Congress, from construction site, is one that not many people have done. In fact, there's 211 attorneys and just the one electrician. So I am available for other House members when they're, for those. But this old house and myself have a little something in common. We both started in 1979. My four-year apprenticeship program, I came out of high school, and back then it was quite different. We had a number of shops in school. I was one of four boys in my family. My three brothers went a more traditional route to college, but it just wasn't in my DNA. Mom gave me a bicycle. I tore it apart in a few minutes right after. I enjoyed working with my hands. But certainly, back then and today, parents, in order to make it in America, you got to go to college. And I have three kids of my own now. And when they were born, I didn't know if they wanted to go to college or build the college. So I have two who went to college, and my son is an electrician. He is the only one without college debt, owns his house, and has his family started. So for those who want to work with their hands, the dignity of getting up each and every morning, going out and creating something, that's something to be proud of. Yet society somehow has put a stigma on it. Well, I can tell you where they don't have a stigma right now: Florida and Texas, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, when they're just dying to get people there. So it starts with, obviously, at home, but the guidance counselors, each and every time, where do you want to go to college? They don't even talk about serving in our country in the military. And then teachers, got to go to college. Well, I loved every day I was an electrician. I did a four-year apprenticeship, went out, worked on top of bridges, powerhouses. It was something that brings me a great deal of value serving in Congress. That perspective is not one that many members have. And so in addition to being helped the country move along, it's a good experience to bring with you. We know what unemployment is like. We are red and blue. We're hot in the summer, we're cold in the winter, because that's the job site. So my colleague who, together we put together the Building Trades Caucus, McKinley, is a carpenter and an architect. He understands what that is like. So we have these discussions. So when we talk about training, the training program that I came through was 4 years back then. It takes 5 years now. I guess we were a little smarter back then. My friends in the bricklayers like that. So the point being is, if they put the apprenticeship programs that are run by the building trades together today, they would be the largest four-year institution in this country, literally spending millions of dollars every year. And they're not paid to do this. This is something that they self-perform and self-fund. That's important to know, that a good quality program can give somebody a career path that they might not have been ready for coming out of high school. And if they want to go back to college and start to run a company, we think that's great, because not every kid's ready at 18, 19, or 20. I went back and did some college later on, but it's those experiences. And here we are. When I came in, we had 40 slots available, and we had 1,400 applications. They're down to half of that. Still, people are applying for it, but the idea is that nobody's exposing it to them. Most of the shops in regular high school have disappeared. You know, you have the performing arts, which is so important. Nobody's suggesting anything. But out of all the kids I graduated high school, nobody I know is earning a living from performing arts. I can tell you hundreds in my class are in the building trades and different occupations working with your hands. We need to re-engage that no matter what you do. If you're a doctor, a PhD, a lawyer, if you're an electrician, a carpenter, a plumber, or even a bricklayer, that those are something you can be very proud of. Today, I take my grandson by jobs I worked on 30 years ago. So I retired out of the IBW after 37 proud years and moved here to Congress so we could have conversations like this. And I want to thank this old house, Kevin, and the entire project for bringing that next generation so we can talk about, yeah, if you want to go to college, that's great. But you know what? If you want to be an electrician, that's great too. I'm a proud parent of both. With
Congressman,
that, I thank you.
One question for you before we get to the Q&A, and it came up earlier, which is what should be the role of the federal government, and is it appropriate? There was a conversation about whether or not they incent or whether they directly fund. What is it you and your colleagues think you think they should be doing?
Here's a good political answer. Yes, no, and maybe. Let me explain what we mean. Right now, 529s is a tax deference for those who want to send their kids to college. But if you want to send your child to an apprenticeship school, because some schools charge, you can't use it. So we have a bill to say, hey, you can go either way you want. You know, in education, it doesn't have to be just college. But that's the mindset we were dealing with. You know, having registered programs are important because having different skill sets within a trade, we understand are different. But the electricity in California is the same electricity in New Jersey. It goes back and forth. Having that skill set so that core group of workers are portable. Today we might be real busy in New Jersey, but tomorrow there might not be any work and our guys hit the road and go find a job somewhere else. And those skill sets and those standards gives you a degree of comfort and reliability that they've been trained properly and they can do a job here and we're not starting from the beginning. So those standards are so important. So in terms of a registered apprenticeship program, I think that has a role that we do nationally. So we're not doing it state by state by state, you know, 49 different ways of doing it. So I think those are two very important ways that we can address it. One, if we want to give a parents that ability to send their kid to an apprenticeship school or to college, and we feel that's important, that's a role for us to play. And it's also a role to play so there are standards, so we're not trying to recreate it and create more regulation every state at a time.
And in terms, just from your perspective, the chances of success, give us a sense as to how you think something like that is going to be received by your colleagues.
529, we thought was going to come through as a rider on one bill, and at the last moment, they changed it from apprenticeships being allowed to be used to religious schools. So there's still bipartisan support. I believe that's going to come up sometime in this session. And I think, based on what I'm hearing from all my colleagues, they think it's a good idea because we're not setting aside additional money. This is parents' money.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. We'd like to turn it over to you for questions to any of our panelists. There is a microphone that is going to be passed around. So if you've got a question, we'd ask you to raise your hand. We'll get you the mic, and we'll ask you to stand up. Do I have the mic? Is this a mic? I have the mic. So if you could just wait until that gets into your hands. We've gotten right here, this gentleman, for a brief Q&A before we wrap it up.
Thanks, everyone, and thanks for the comments. I've brought my 3-year-old daughter here today. She's watching YouTube cat videos right now, which we don't want to interrupt. But we've been fans of this old house for quite some time. Natalie and I have been watching the show ever since she was 1. It's our Saturday morning routine. So she knows all the guys by name, and it's fun. But part of the reason that I've shown her this show and that I brought her here today is because, you know, I want her, speaking to Norm's point around the parent taking responsibility for this, I want to really show her that this is something that people do and this is something that people can really enjoy doing. So my question actually is about the gender gap within the trades and ways that we can address that as a nation, as private citizens, as organizations. I was thrilled to see Bailey is one of the Generation Next folks, and I guess I'm just interested in any comments on the gender gap within the trades that folks could address.
Jump in.
Charlotte, I applaud you on bringing your daughter. I think that's fantastic, and you're doing all the right things. The number two thing that the pros were saying would solve this problem is if we encourage more women to go into the trades. So number one was bringing shop class back, and number two was to bring more women into the trades, because that's going to be important, and it's really about, kind of removing that stigma. One of my favorite examples at that career fair that we ran was actually a carpenter, a female carpenter, who was demonstrating to all of these young kids how to properly hold a hammer. And it was just like, she's like, no, you're doing it wrong. She just had those kids mesmerized, and it's just kind of breaking down the stereotypes about what jobs are for what people. And I think it's an important effort that we all have to be conscious of.
Let me just chime in here. First of all, thank you for bringing your daughter. I was an electrician in a time where the transition started. 1981 was the first time I worked with a female electrician. And back then, I got to tell you, it wasn't the most pleasant thing to watch. If that had been my daughter, I would be very upset at some of the treatment. I can tell you that has completely changed. Because addressing that for women, they make some of the best electricians. I've seen them in every craft, whether you're an iron worker or carpenter, and now they even have the business agents, so the women are very much integrated. But we also have to look at those who've been underserved and in urban communities, because traditionally, many of the skilled crafts have been handed down father to son, father to son. So it only makes sense, unless your dad was in there, you had no shot. Well, that has completely changed, and we need to reach out to those who haven't been considering it, and that alone will help open up more people that are looking at this, that you can get a career. And by the way, after 37 years, you can retire with dignity and have something called a pension. That doesn't happen in every community. I started as an electrician. I finished as an electrician. I'm not sure everybody in this room can say they're in the same career they started in. So opening up to women and those non-traditional father to sons so that everybody has an equal opportunity. Thank you.
Bob and Todd, how many of your apprentices, what's the ratio between male and female?
We're probably 92% male now, 8%. Yep. The good news is in the last 8 years, we've actually doubled our number of women in apprenticeship. And the best recruiting tool we have is the peer-to-peer. Mm-hmm. We find examples of women that completed the program to give their examples about a rewarding career. I can say it all day long, but to have one of theirs speaking directly to each other is accepted in a lot greater way.
Excellent. All right, we've got more questions up front.
I don't know if anybody else wanted to say hi. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm Sarah Hagee. I work at the Commerce Department where we help companies export. And this is the essential element is a trained workforce for our future competitiveness. I spent 6 months at the Department of Labor Apprenticeship Office where the lion's share of apprentices that I learned about were in building trades. And it's wonderful. What I think most people don't know is that there is a wave in government, at least in legislation and work that's going on, to spread this model beyond the building trades to the insurance. I mean, I know this old house maybe isn't of interest to this, but insurance area, medical technicians, not physicians. Apprenticeships can be med techs, can be insurance processors, can be in the nursing field, not nurses, but there's lots of professions out there beyond the building trades, and it's minuscule right now how many are in that. And this is the future as well as the building trades. And I was shocked at how kind of behind we were in this country and how difficult it was to convince employers to do this. I only spent 6 months there, so I'm not an expert on it, but I guess my question to you is, how do you convince employers in your sector where it's established, and this is the wave of the future, so other sectors need to be adopting apprenticeships as well? Thank you.
Okay, I'll take a shot. We just returned from what they call Codel to Switzerland, where we spoke to the chairman and CEO of UBS, one of the largest financial institutions in the world. He started as an apprentice. But they look at the apprenticeship from the building trades with one scope. The other side is what they call white collar. So they have the apprenticeships for the insurance industries, the medical industries, for coding. In fact, 2/3 of their workforce start out as apprentices. Germany has a similar model, but a little bit more strict. We're trying to bring that back here. And the biggest issue that we're running into is not trying to create a registered apprenticeship program. That's quite easy, actually. The difficult part is trying to get employers to step up to the plate, and they have reasons that I guess come natural. They don't want to train somebody that might go to work for their competition. And that is quite a different view from what they do in Germany and Switzerland. And also, there are times that many of them just don't want to pay the cost. You know, go to college and then we'll just do the last piece at the end. That's dramatically different. It's a mindset that starts very early on, not only from the prospective child that wants to become an apprenticeship, but from the employer coming down. When it comes to high tech, you know, we don't want to give away any of the secrets. It's completely different when you go to those two countries. They're training for the career, not for that piece of paper that goes up on the wall, and that's the big difference.
Yeah. So we've actually been really involved in understanding the Swiss model as well. Our CEO visited Switzerland and understood it. And there's a group called CareerWise in Colorado that we're one of the founding companies involved with them, and have 4 apprentices that are in high school. They're juniors in high school right now working with us, mainly in our technology team, because that's another great area. You know, the trades is really important, but you know, one of our highest ranking, you know, kind of technology employees, you know, running our company didn't go to college. You know, he learned his technology skills on the job. So completely a believer in that and how it can be applicable to other, you know, other industries as well.
I would say the thing that the building trades figured out, the Germans and the Swiss have figured out when CareerWise is doing Colorado, is if those 2 barriers, which you're absolutely right, Congressman, are I don't want to train them and they leave and it costs a lot. If you're doing apprenticeship programs one employer at a time, those are real problems. But if you're building multi-employer programs, if you're aggregating many employers at once, then if one apprentice leaves that you train, somebody else train the other one that you can pull from. So how you create, again, sort of these regional partnerships amongst multiple employers helps bring those risks down and helps employers share costs and do things effectively.
Other questions?
Thank you. My name is Lori Krigler. I'm the current national president of the Plumbing, Heating, Cooling Contractors Association. So we are here to listen and know your pain. We have contractors all over the country, 3,000 plus member companies that are struggling with this issue. And we have them all doing it at a local level, going to career fairs, trying to get through to the guidance counselors, trying to establish unique and creative programs in their own states. My question really is directed to the congressman. I was wondering if you felt that there was any role for the federal government to create or partner in a public service announcement that would be geared toward parents. Public service announcement, I'm sorry, did I say that?
The first thing we're doing is we're having this discussion today, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to go and participate in this old house, is start bringing up the awareness. Employers know it because they're not getting the people, but the average person who's raising a family, well, they're seeing it's high tech. I think it's a great idea that we create this public awareness, and it's going on through today. They're coming up to my home district in Camden to talk about it there, and there's a movement that's going on. But it starts with your neighbors and your friends and having that discussion. Oh, what's your kid going to be? He's going to be a doctor. He's going to be a lawyer. He's going to be an electrician. We have to understand that is great. That is something that they're proud of. They can raise a family, they can take care of them. Because they work with their hands, it's still that stigma. So we're going to pursue the public awareness that you're talking about. But I don't know, Norm would be a pretty good spokesperson. What do you think?
Feel a PSA coming your way.
I can see that coming on.
He's our PSA ace. All right, let's move on to some other questions. I know there's a bunch of hands over on this side of the room. Keep them up there so we can see you and get the mic to you.
Thank you all for being here and sharing your expertise. This is a really important conversation, and so thank you. And thank you, Nathan, also for your service. You answered one of my questions was the percentage of women and men, and you mentioned about 92% male still. As a contractor myself in the industry, I've had a contractor license about 10 years, and I can tell you to this day, even though we think it's changing, when I go in for my CECs every single year and I sit in a room like this, it is 99% men. And it was the first day I took my contractor license, and it still is this year. So it's not, in that aspect, I don't see certain things changing, at least with women running the businesses. And so we're moving somewhere positive, I know, but we're not where we should be yet. And so I was wondering on twofold, are there any specific recruitment programs that you have either governmental or in the public sector-wise? Specifically, I know there's some out there for women, but I'm thinking military, ex-military, wounded warriors, or spouses of military families.
To get women in. Helmets to hard hats.
Yeah.
It's a national program because those returning from the military, A, know how to get up in the morning, know how to take orders, and know how to work in the elements. So that's probably been the most successful veteran program to the building trades that I know of. But I know each of the individual trades also have recruitment programs, because when that pocket of applicants is going down, they're looking to spread the word. And there is nothing better than to have a woman speak to a woman. But that transition into leadership or ownership is still one that lags behind, there's no question.
And Congressman, can you explain Helmets to Hard Hats for us, for our audience?
Helmets to Hard Hats is a national program put on by the North American Building Trades, where they go out and recruit those warriors who are coming home for employment opportunities in the building trades. 15 different craft unions with 30 different trades within them. As again, come on over, we can put you into a job, thank you for your service, and you're ready to go to work. And so many of them come out of the military with those skill sets, in addition to the ones I spoke about, but the ones that come out that worked in the field in the military as CBs or other the forces that have gone on.
You have something, Bob?
I just wanted to add on the women recruiting. We work with about 13 different organizations around the country. I'm from Chicago, so I work with the Chicago Women in Trades constantly. I've been working with them for about 18 years now. And they do a pre-apprenticeship. So they bring women in that want to get into the trades. They expose them to all the different trades, and then they kind of pick where they want to go. And even a few of them pick be a bricklayer.
Thank you, Amy. Other questions? There's a couple here. We'll get the microphone to you.
Oh, there's Daryl.
Thank you. My name is Michael Brickrane. I'm with the Department of Defense working with the Manufacturing USA Institutes. Each one is a different technology area. There are 14 of them across the country. And we have a lot of apprenticeship programs out of the institutes. We see a lot of the same challenges with career and technical education perception, apprenticeship program perception, manufacturing perception. One new partner that we've recently started to engage with is the maker community, and wanted to see whether on the trades side there's any engagement there or thoughts about that engagement, where they have a pretty sterling brand. They're making inroads into bringing some of that hands-on interaction back into the classroom. There's a Congressional Maker Caucus and Capitol Hill Maker Fair coming up in about a month. So I wanted to see if there was any engagement from the panel in that vector or thoughts around that.
I will add one thing to that before I let my colleagues hear. It's interesting because I see it a lot, this maker community. And in terms of reversing the stigma of people in the trades and working with your hands, to me, this seems to be the forefront. There are people who are makers, quote unquote, and they are publishing their projects, their lifestyles on social media, and are outright celebrities. I mean, followed by hundreds of thousands, in many cases millions. And it's anecdotal at best, but to me, it seems as if it has brought a sexiness and an attraction to working with your hands, creating, and my guess is it can only be good for the issues that we're talking about here. The young people who are consuming other young people who are celebrities for making stuff with their hands, celebrities in the media, in the social media sense of the world, where they have followers, excitement. And now with these Maker Fest, the gatherings grow every year. It's incredible to see. I think there is something legitimate and real there from my perspective. Anyone else have an opinion on makers?
I would just agree. I mean, we see the crossover obviously between wood-clad windows and woodworking, and just the appreciation, I think, for the artistry and the craftsmanship is rising with the maker movement. I think they're helping re-establish the value of making something with attention to detail, with creativity, with innovation, problem solving, which are all the same skills we need and see in the trades.
Other questions? Oh, there we go.
Hi, my name is Kat. I'm a female with one arm who wasn't let in the wood class, but I ended up being an electrician. So there is one of us in here. I just wanted to bring up a point that is so clear to me, that there's a trend right now. Let's go green. Let's have cars. Let's have solar. Let's have wind. And the wind machines I saw driving through here were all stagnant. They weren't even moving today. But saving old houses is what you all do so cool, so well. If that's not green, I don't know why nobody said it. That is a green movement. Save all these small towns instead of bulldozing them. That's green. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you for that. No comments? Other questions? Sure.
Hi, my name is Keith Mears. I'm one of the This Old House insiders, and this is just a point of perspective. It has to do with respect, and it has to do with being a parent. Whether you're a pilot or a doctor or a lawyer, you have to let your child be what they want to. Ultimately, when the pilot or the lawyer or the doctor goes to lay their head at night, they go home. And the home's not available unless these people here are able to build it for them and maintain it for them. So when my daughters were looking for something to do, they didn't go into the trades, but you have to have the respect and say, that's a great place for you to go. You have to be willing to say, yes, go do that. So you have to applaud these people for what they do and really tell people that's a worthy place to go. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for that. We are going to end it there with the Q&A. We, however, are not going to run away, so you'll have access to it to us after this, or at least some of us. Congressman, thank you for your participation, and to you and your colleagues for hosting this. And thank you very much to our panelists as well for your thoughts, your expertise on this. We appreciate that. We can give them a round of applause as well.